Will Bitcoin make El Salvador a wealthy country? Can it rise to the tier of a first world economy on the back of a digital currency? That's what we're going to talk about. That's what we're going to find out in just a second. So to kind of recap everything that's happened with El Salvador in the past year and a half in terms of adopting Bitcoin as legal tender, let's back up just so that we can get a clear understanding of what they're doing exactly. Most of you probably know, but for those that don't, this is a good recap. El Salvador was the first country in the world to officially adopt Bitcoin as legal tender September 7th, 2021. El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele, stated that contrary to the allegations made by the mainstream media and ratings agencies that his country is now collapsing due to its bet on Bitcoin, El Salvador is predicted to have acquired thus far 2,381 or so Bitcoins since December of 2021 when all of this started, after making, I think, about 11 Bitcoin acquisitions in total. So the final price purchase of Bitcoin occurred June 30th, 2022 of this year, when El Salvador purchased 80 coins with an average price of $19,000. So although some of these opponents contend that El Salvador's Bitcoin experiment has, failed, which I kind of bat back on, I don't really agree with that. And we're going to talk about why in just a second. They say that the whole Bitcoin experiment with El Salvador has failed due to the country's unrealistic or unrealized losses with Bitcoin and those investments. Although many Salvadorians are quite ecstatic and excited about the fact that their government has launched this adventure and this initiative, but to judge a country based on unrealized losses in Bitcoin is kind of ridiculous. It's the same as if you invested in anything. Just because something goes up or goes down doesn't mean you have a gain, doesn't mean you have a loss. You have to actually take advantage of it for you claiming that profit or that loss for that to be realized. So it's not fair to say just because Bitcoin's in a bear market, crypto's down this year, that El Salvador has completely failed. There's a reason for this. They have some opposition. The most outspoken opponents of Bukele are terrified. They're exerting pressure on the country to change its choices. And these are powerful elites, those who work for or profit from them in a lot of ways. They pretty much own everything. They still do. These people that run the world, run the financial system, set a global economic standard. They don't want to see this happen. They don't want to see Bitcoin succeed. They don't want to see Bukele and El Salvador succeed in making Bitcoin legal tender. It destroys everything that they've had control of for generations. The claim that they want to make is that El Salvador has lost around $50 million due to the plunging price of Bitcoin on exchanges and, globally. But, it's incorrect because, they haven't sold any Bitcoin yet. That's just the fact of the matter. And, El Salvador is already quite impoverished. They're not a wealthy country yet. I think they will be, but they're not yet. They're on their way up. They're growing. It produced $28 billion in goods and services in 2021 alone. It's ridiculous to assert that a $50 million loss, which is less than 0.2% of its entire GDP, is ruining or threatening its country or its economy. The reality is, even if the country were to accept that reasoning as accurate, it would be absurd to assume a $28 billion per year economy is failing or collapsing because of a 0.2% loss. It just sounds ridiculous, especially in 1 year. Given that the economy of El Salvador has expanded also 10.3% or $4 billion in 2021. GDP has increased since that time by 10.3%. Tourism and income from tourism is up 52%. People are going back there. They're going there for the first time. They're traveling there. Employment has increased 7%. New companies up 12%. Exports up 17%. Energy generation up 19%. Energy exports up thousands of percent, given their now limelight on the global stage because of Bitcoin. Internal revenue up 37%, all without tax increases, which is crazy given how much and how often first world economies raise taxes on their citizens and how they're constantly trying to do it. Even the US, it's insane. You don't need to increase taxes. There's ways to make money as a country. The crime and murder rate, which is the biggest one, I think, in my opinion, has fallen 95%, which is insane. So overall, Bukele is doing wonders for El Salvador. El Salvador is, thriving relatively compared to where it was just a couple of years ago. I think what he's doing, you can look at it as this reassignment of wealth from the political and corporate elites of the world to the average everyday person by empowering them and giving them an option to opt out of a broken financial system that just does not work anymore. It's inevitable that Bitcoin will rise in price again. It happens cyclically every couple of years, every 4 years or so, as adoption, continues to swell. Bitcoin could even get to $100,000. We were getting close to that. It hit 70,000 last bull run just a year and a half ago. A year ago, actually, last fall. And it could really get to 100,000 at some point. It can go a lot higher. There's no reason why it can't, especially with a limited supply. This bet Bukele is making is going to redefine the country of El Salvador. It's going to make it much wealthier per capita. It already is. It also has raised the status of the country and set it on a new course for success in a digital era, which you don't see very often with a lot of countries, especially with this kind of growth. It's tremendous. And it's not if, but when Bukele and El Salvador succeed in this endeavor with Bitcoin making it legal tender, many countries around the world are going to follow suit. They're going to follow El Salvador in the model that they've put forth. It'll serve as the best use case in the world for Bitcoin adoption and making it legal tender. And it takes a solid proof of concept for things to change in the minds of people and in the minds of nations and those that run them and rule them. So, I think overall, El Salvador is set to see some incredible change over the next half decade, over the next decade. I think by the time Bitcoin, goes in its next bull cycle, I think we're at the bottom towards the end of this bear market. It's going to do wonders for the country. And it's such a small part of, the investment, the money that the country has put into it. It's not detrimental, the fact that it's down. It's down millions, but they're up billions in their GDP in different areas. So in the end, Bitcoin will probably, make this run again around 2024, beginning of 2023 if we're lucky, late 2025 if it takes longer for whatever reason. And I think by that time, in the next couple of years, you're going to be shocked. And I want you to come back to this video, and I want you to rewatch it again and remember where the country's at now versus where it got to the next couple of years. So don't be surprised. Anyways, guys, this is not financial advice. I'm not advising you to buy Bitcoin because of this, or crypto for that reason. Do your own due diligence. Look into things accordingly. Educate yourself, and everything that's on the table in terms of an opportunity. And keep this stuff in mind. See you guys next time.